and welcome to Relationships and Astrology Special Edition on Venus Retrograde. Extra special because Margaret and I are actually in the same room.
Yes, that's quite amazing, isn't it, Armand? And here we are in Baltimore, and we wish we could show you the views because we've got stunning views of the harbor, so it's a real joy to be here.
It's very nice. And Venus is going to go retrograde.
Yes, that's what we're really talking about today, and she doesn't do this very often, does she? When did she do this the last time?
It was the summer of 2015. That's about every 400 and something days, depending on how you look at it, if you include the retrograde or not, but about every year and a half, almost 2 years.
And just to tell our listeners a little bit about what retrograde means, because it's not that the planet literally goes backwards in the sky, it's really an illusion. It's as if we're running on different tracks, and it looks like the person on the other track is actually running slower than us and going behind, but in fact, it's just how it feels like in the sky. But it certainly has quite an impact on us psychologically, doesn't it, when a planet goes retrograde. So maybe, if we say a little bit about what Venus is, I mean, this is Aphrodite, so she's really quite an important goddess and has a very important role in our lives in terms of really our self-value, how we feel about ourselves, and really what we value in life.
What we value in ourselves, what we value in our partners, what we value in relationship. And, Venus, talk about relationships a lot. Venus is really, it is values, though. It's values, valuables, and things that have value for us.
Yes, and also what we find beautiful. And I think one thing to consider, when we're looking at charts together, we work together to look at charts consultations for clients. And one of the key things we do look at is the Venus in the chart of both clients to see what is it that they find attractive, what is it that they find beautiful. So if you look at your own chart, notice what is it that you find attractive. And that's very important in a relationship, of course, because there's, there's an initial pull and attraction to somebody.
I think that Venus is what you're attracted to, but also it's in a sense of like what you put out there. How you express yourself in terms of relationship. So, for example, Venus is going to retrograde in Aries back to Pisces, and I think Venus is debilitated in Aries. It's a terrible sign for Venus. Some astrologers have been telling me. I don't know.
Not that I'm biased or anything, but I think Venus in Aries is the best sign to have Venus in. Of course, yes.
Don't say.
Absolutely. I have lived with Venus in Aries for quite a long time, and I have to say that I absolutely love having her in Aries because she's a very assertive Aphrodite, and she's quite direct, doesn't play any games, and really tends to go after what she enjoys and what she likes and what she finds beautiful.
Well, that seems like it would be problematic for a goddess. I mean, what with being feminine and all that.
I think that's all gone by the by. I mean, we're in a whole new age, and of course, one of the things we're talking about a lot is where are relationships going and how are relationships developing in this whole new paradigm. So I really think that Venus in Aries is kind of coming to the fore. So, of course, at the moment, though, going retrograde, there's a lot of kind of revisiting, really, of old issues, isn't there, to do with relationships?
No doubt. The story about Venus retrograde is old lovers are going to come back to you. And sometimes that happens.
Yes, and maybe it's a time to resolve old issues, so even if they don't actually come back, that maybe it's a time to kind of just check out what's happening and just to revisit unfinished business to do with relationships.
And even when they do come back, that's often what it is. Once in a while, a relationship that should have blossomed or should have continued ends, and Venus retrograde is an opportunity to come back and to get started again. That does happen. A lot of times a relationship ended and you have some lingering issues in business, and then the person comes back and you wrap them up, or as I like to say, you realize why they are your ex. And sometimes it's just a sweet little thing, the girl I had a crush on in 7th and 8th grade, 2 years. I saw she came to one of my band's shows, and it was just sweet. It was just nice to see her and so on,
Well, it's very important to try and resolve things, isn't it? I mean, relationships that are left unfinished can often carry things into the next relationship or leave something lingering. So sometimes it's a great time to really resolve those things. And even if the other person doesn't appear, it's a great time within ourselves to maybe resolve what needs to be finished and to be able to move on into a new relationship.
So I mean, if you don't resolve some things, you may carry them on into the next life, and that would be quite a bit.
Absolutely, particularly if there's a karmic link with somebody, and often those unresolved things are to do with karmic links. And what's very interesting also at this time is, of course, quite a few planets in Pisces. So there's this interesting mix of this Aries energy that's going retrograde with Venus, and then there's the Pisces planet, the Sun and Neptune and Mercury. But also there's still the Mars, Uranus that are very, very close together in Aries. So there is quite a dynamic kind of energy around with this retrograde.
Certainly, I mean, that it really, there is a lot, yes, a lot of Pisces, a lot of Aries, and Venus is, she's going forward where it is the most direct expression of energy. It is a really wonderful Venus to be out there and be forward and but then going to stop and retrograde. Now, Venus in Aries likes to start things, and the book on relationships that begin with Venus retrograde is that they can be a little bit problematic because the energy is not outgoing as with any retrograde. It's more inward kind of energy, and it's perhaps especially so retrograding in Aries. But then, tying things together, Venus is going to retrograde back into Pisces.
Yes. What do you think about that? That kind of movement right back into Pisces. I mean, that's quite a shift in energy, and we've had a lot of Piscean energy around. And Pisces is so different to Aries because it's much more that dreamy state, the imaginative, the spiritual. So it's much slower, and it's much more. It's not as tangible.
It certainly isn't, and I think we began the year with a lot of Piscean energy. We talked about this a lot. There's a little sense of a drag in its own way. It's hard to get traction as you want to go forward in the year, and I think that Venus, in the area of relationships, certainly Venus retrograding back into Pisces. I feel like Venus retrograde is good for unresolved issues, and I think maybe even some of them from the very recent past. The retrograde back into Pisces is going to sort of bring us back there for a review.
That's so true. One thing I wanted to mention was, a lot of people say don't get married during this period of time, or don't maybe, have a marriage proposal or whatever. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't worry about getting married if you already have a solid relationship. I might hold off on getting engaged or taking a next step forward while the planet of relationship is going backwards. I mostly, what I see is people who, when any planet is retrograde, particularly Mercury, Mars, and Venus, we often have this sense of, we really want to do what the planet is about. When Mercury is retrograde, I'm always looking for software and stuff like that. I don't usually think about it, but when Mars is retrograde, people get kind of horny because it's the energy, sexual energy, sexual drive, and it's sort of turned inward, but you feel it more. And I think with Venus retrograde, we often want to start a relationship. We feel like we should be in a relationship. There's almost a compulsion towards it, and I mean, I've seen people who get into relationships, meet, move in during the 40 days of Venus retrograde, and then afterwards kind of, act in haste and repent in leisure. So I think that, Venus retrograde is not going to stand in the way of true love and soul connections and so on. But there may be a little bit more compulsion around it.
Well, especially because Venus in Aries loves the chase, doesn't it? I mean, it loves the adventure, it loves the pursuit. And what Venus in Aries has to be very careful, anybody with Venus in Aries, is it really about the person, or is it about the chase? Is it about the kind of, the goal is to get somebody to fall in love with you rather than actually, really wanting to be with the person. And I think maybe also during this retrograde time, it's a very good time to really assess that, particularly if somebody's already in a relationship with Venus retrograde or is attracted to somebody, just to check that out, really. Is this real, or is this just being the knight in shining armor?
Yeah, there's Venus in Aries is fun, and sometimes, sometimes what I would imagine is as Venus retrogrades from Aries, where it's all about the fun, into Pisces, you sort of go, oh, wait a minute, there's consequences to all this,
Yes. Yes.
Getting into a relationship is one thing, being in it is a different thing.
Yes, because it's not quite all the fun and adventure or whatever. And also Venus in Aries does like being chased as well, so likes it on the other side. So very interesting time really to go into.
I think that it will be between March 3rd and April 15th, when Venus is actually retrograde, a very dynamic time. But remember that just before the retrograde and for a while after the retrograde, Venus is sort of covering the same territory. So there's a lingering sense of it after the retrograde as well.
So just to let people know, this is really going to affect you if your own Venus is in Aries, of course, or if you've got Venus in Libra in particular, that you're going to probably respond to this a little bit more, react to this a little bit more. And also that if any listeners are interested in studying the astrology of relationships, we're starting our first course, 6-week online course, which you can actually download the recordings at any time on the astrology of relationships starting on March 12th. So if you're interested, please go to our website, www.relationshipsandastrology.com. And we will be doing a 1-year course starting next September, a certified course. So we'd love you to join us.
What better thing to do with Venus retrograde than to study relationship astrology? It's perfect.
Exactly, absolutely.
So I will be seeing you in Dublin.
Yes, we'll be back online soon. So from Baltimore, both of us, we say goodbye to you and enjoy Venus retrograde.
Bye.
Bye-bye.